And good morning, everybody. Go Astros. We lost the opening credits, but you know what? Let's skip the opening credits and get talking. What's been a really good week for Astros baseball. First of all, Andy, good morning. How you feeling about the Aggies tonight?
Is there a game?
Okay, and Brian, how are you?
No, it's I'm excited. I'm nervous. Yesterday went about as I expected, but it's College World Series, and Tennessee's a really good team. So anybody thinking that A&M was going to walk in, that either team was going to walk in there and sweep the first two games was kind of deluding themselves because they're evenly matched in different ways. So good luck to A&M tonight. I know neither of you can extend that as Brian does have the benefit of knowing that his Jello shot record is very, very safe. As of this
I
morning,
woke
it's
up in
still
warm maroon. I woke up in warm maroon this morning intentionally. So, I mean, I think I've been pretty good at being out here for wishing you
I
well.
thought that was one of our meat judging championship hats that you're wearing. It's got a cow on it.
No. It's the Round Rock briskets.
All
Brian,
right.
how are things up north?
So we are in a heat wave, and I do not have central air conditioning. I
Oh
do
my
not live
God.
in civilization, and other than that,
Will the heat wave be gone by Sunday?
um, maybe.
All right, because I'll be at Astros at Mets on
Yeah.
Sunday.
Sorry.
Speaking of the Astros, 5 straight guys. You know, first of all, just overall, what are these last 5 games? How are you feeling about the team? Only 2 games under 500. All of a sudden, Andy, overall, just has your forecast or at least attitude about the future changed at all?
I honestly, I'm still in wait and see mode because, well, and I guess this show, and specifically, the three of us have been saying they just need to figure out a way to string a bunch of wins together. And they finally did something more than a 3 game winning streak, which they'd only done, I guess, twice
Yeah.
prior to this week. So they've won 5 in a row. I also know that most of Astros fandom had completely written them off as of last Tuesday because they lost to the White Sox and got shut out in Chicago. So at that point, Astros Twitter had we're done. It's over, and it's amazing what 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 days will do for you. Because all of a sudden we're back in the wild card chase. We're back within striking distance of the Mariners, knowing we have a series coming up with them in July. Things are looking much, much better. Considering that we really haven't solved our starting pitching problem, I'm still in a wait and see mode.
Brian, how about you?
Yeah, I mean, so the team has not played to its capabilities throughout the season. And what those capabilities are, and are they good enough to get in the playoffs, is an open question. But we all knew they weren't this bad. I guess the other thing to sort of note here, and it goes with the 5 game things, and I looked this up after they won the third game. That was only their third. Had a 6 game winning streak, which I'd completely forgotten, and a 3 game winning streak. They hadn't just stacked up a whole streak of wins together. And that's very much, I think, the feeling of how this season has gone to this point. And part of why this week has felt so different is that, they're not only winning, and they won the game Wednesday against the White Sox because the White Sox couldn't catch the ball, but all the other wins are because, well, they played a lot better than the other team.
And a good team too. The Orioles are one of the best teams in the American League, at least.
Yeah, absolutely. And despite all that, like, they still couldn't retire Adley Rutschman or Gunnar Henderson. Now, fortunately, they retired basically everyone else in the order on Saturday and Sunday. But this is the Orioles are a very good team, and the Astros took it to them. And again, they were not fluke. They were not. None of the wins were fluky. And again, the team is better than what we've seen before. How good is still an open question. But it's a reminder that that there is a lot of talent on this team. And, hopefully more of that shows out in the second half of the season.
And do you had a follow up to that?
Yeah, I mean, to that point, the talent on this team, the couple of the guys that we have needed to produce and have been not producing this year, specifically Alex Bregman, last 30 days, he's hitting 343 with a 571 slugging percentage. Yordan Alvarez for the same time frame, 326 with a 632. Altuve's hitting 300 over the last month. There are guys who we needed to perform who haven't performed up until this point who have really picked it up, mostly in the absence of Kyle Tucker, who is still limping with bruise on his shin, I guess. I'm still holding my breath, waiting to hear that he's actually broken his leg, and the Astros just haven't diagnosed it yet, because that's kind of where we're getting to in normal Astros fandom. But there's been, the people we've needed to perform who have not performed well so far this year have been performing for the last month, and that's why you're seeing the shift. Really, when you get down to it, once you got out of April, this team is playing at a pace that is the pace you would expect from a playoff team. Yeah. They just dug themselves, as Brian and I talked about last week, dug themselves such a deep hole that it's taken a while. And the other thing I'm waiting on to see is which team shows up to play the Rockies this week. Yes, we usually handle the Rockies well, but we've had good series against good teams, maybe not to the extent that we did this weekend against the Orioles, and then come up and stepped on our own dicks the next couple of games against what we had considered lower competition. So the Astros need to be 500 by Thursday.
Yeah, I mean, I think that we should obviously expect that with the opponent. But you're exactly right, Andy. I mean, we've seen that's been a hallmark of this team really since the beginning of the run of playing down to competition at usually inopportune times. One of the things I want to talk about though is Joey Loperfido. Looks like he's back. It looks like he's back to stay. But this dude just hits. Are any of y'all surprised? I mean, we're not seeing the power we saw out of the minors, and a lot of that's the PCL, the ball flies. But I, for one, am really shocked that he never had the moments we had warned Astros fans about. Of it might take a while. He might need, Bregman and Tucker took a while. Brian, overall, just what are your thoughts on Joey Loperfido?
He takes pretty good at bats. And it's not necessarily his working counts, but he picks pretty good pitches to hit. And so he's getting a lot of singles, but I think he's getting a lot of singles because he's making pretty good decisions, pretty good swing decisions at the plate. His strikeouts have not been as big an issue in the majors as it looked like it might be. So maybe he's adjusting his swing a little bit to the majors. Again, we'll see how this works sort of in the long term. But, I have a lot of confidence when Loperfido's at the plate right now. What was interesting is it was pretty clear towards the end of his first trip, and then of course in his second trip, it seemed to me that, I don't know if this is Joe Espada or the front office or the coaching staff, they had seemed to sour on him a little bit. They weren't playing him as much as we sort of thought. The absence of Tucker has allowed him to be in the lineup, and he was really effective this weekend. And hopefully he's up for good.
Andy, what about you?
I'm not sure, not want to argue, but I'm not sure that the coaching staff soured on Loperfido as much as during his second call-up, we faced a bunch of left-handed pitchers in a row of starting pitchers. And I think part of the problem there is that for whatever reason, he didn't get starts against left-handed pitching because he's a left-handed hitter. He's never shown any propensity for needing to be platooned or that he hits worse in his minor league career against left-handed pitching. So a decision was made. I don't think that had as much to do with Loperfido as it did with Chas McCormick and Jake Myers. But having said that, I think the strikeout piece, his strikeouts in the minors were different than some other guys that we worry about, like Yainer Diaz comes to mind. And, I'd like to talk about Yainer for a little bit later. Joey Loperfido sold out for power a little bit in the minors, and it looks like he is very focused on making contact. But even in the minors, when he had a high K rate, they weren't the I'm going to chase sliders 5 feet off the plate kind of strikeouts. It was more of a selling out for power and just not making the contact that you needed to make. But he's adjusted. And if the coaching he's gotten, the direction he's gotten is, look, we need you on base. We need base runners at the bottom of the lineup. He's taken that coaching, and he's so far doing really well. He is so early in his career, though. There's going to be so many ups and downs and fits and starts. You have to imagine that there'll be constant adjustments for the rest of the season. But I don't see a situation where he should be sent down again. Matter of fact, I kind of think part of the rearranging of the chairs in the next month or so are going to involve one of the other outfielders that happen to be right-handed that happen to profile kind of similarly, with giving Loperfido more of an opportunity going forward. So I think the Astros are going to be buying a lot of Loperfido stock in the near future.
Well, let's dive into Yainer Diaz, Andy, and we'll get started with him. I mean, just overall, I don't think he's having the season most of us expected. He did have almost like everybody else, he had a pretty good week, but overall, where are you sitting with Yainer?
I'm not worried about his hitting as much, and that's not really what my concern is. But this weekend really highlighted an issue that I think a lot of people you ignore one side of the field. He's not a good defensive catcher at this point in his career, and I know there were some things that he showed last year that just haven't been apparent this year in receiving the ball. He's a very noisy catcher. There's a lot of movement. There's a lot of pulling the balls out of zones. There was a specific sequence with him and Presley, I guess 2 games ago, where Presley was visibly upset with how the lack of framing cost him a call. Didn't say anything, but you could tell there were some issues there.
Right.
Contrast that to Cesar Salazar, whose primary skill is receiving the baseball. This was a better team this weekend when Salazar was behind the plate than when Yainer was behind the plate. And that's a concern going forward unless you're going to find Yainer someplace else to play in the field. Because it was markedly different when you saw Salazar receiving the ball this weekend.
Yeah, there was actually a story about that and how most of the they're talking about how most of the pitchers at Sugarland really enjoyed throwing to Salazar, that he made them feel comfortable. He knew how to manage a game. And I agree. Sometimes with Yainer, it's a little bit of you don't know what you're going to get. Because didn't he have like catcher's interference 2 games in a row? I mean, how often does that really happen in a season, much less games in a row?
It's almost, I was talking to somebody online this weekend, and it's, and this is, I'll tell on myself. When I was learning to drive, I learned to drive by watching people drive on TV. And when people drive on TV, at least in the 70s and 80s, there was a lot of this all the time. It's like he does motions that he thinks catchers are supposed to do that have nothing to do with actually catching the ball. And he's playing pretend back there. There really needs to be a reset with him on what a catcher is in Major League Baseball. And I think you can tell the difference, especially from what we got. And I don't want to bring up the whole Martin Maldonado thing, but Martin Maldonado, whether or not he was good at the end of his career, was a much better receiver of the ball than Yainer Diaz is at this point in his career. And there's got to be some fix to that at some point. Or maybe he just needs to start playing first base.
Or DHing more. Brian?
Yeah, but Yainer had a particularly terrible May, 200 batting average with no homers. This month, 316 batting average. He always should be a relatively high batting average player. 4 homers and 2 doubles. And I really enjoyed that triple this weekend because, Yainer has, better speed than you'd expect from a catcher. Part of that is it'll be eroded over time by having to squat so much behind the plate. Andy's issues are correct, but the team is better off overall if Yainer can be the catcher. And so, what they've got to do to make that work is sort of it's something they sort of have to figure out. But the team would be better with Yainer at catcher. Though Cesar Salazar has hit much better in his 10 at-bats or whatever it is than we'd expected. But I don't expect that to continue over the long term. But I've enjoyed, he's 5 for 10 or something like that. I've enjoyed that so far.
He's hitting a smooth 500 right now with a 1.125 OPS in 3 games. But still, small sample sizes be damned.
Small sample sizes be damned. And speaking of be damned, I actually have a previous commitment, so I'm going to jump off the call. Andy is going to take over for the rest of the show. I just wanted to say hi to everybody because I haven't been on in forever. But I will see you guys later.
Can you stay on just long enough to pitch Ballpark Nation? Didn't something happen
this
week?
Yeah. Yeah, episode 2 tomorrow, the Albuquerque Isotopes episode. It's a lot of fun because we're also talking a little Breaking Bad. So definitely check that out. It'll be out tomorrow morning at 8 a.m.
Yay, science.
All right. Go Stros. I'll be there Tuesday and Wednesday. And if you're mad at Astros Pride Night, just don't go. Just don't go. Just don't go.
All right. We have a surprise programming announcement, evidently. Who knew? So we were talking about Yiner. What are some of the other things you saw this weekend? I mean, this was an impressive – it wasn't just winning a series. It wasn't even just sweeping a series. It was an impressive series win because the Astros, outside of one inning, what was the 7th or 8th inning on Friday night, really dominated a very, very good team. This wasn't just we happened to win a couple of one-run games, which, frankly, we're due to win a couple of one-run games. But
I think there's sort of two things offensively. One is they hit well with runners in scoring position, which was an issue early in the season and which has, as we talked about in April, would regress to the mean. And the mean was sort of higher than what it was. Again, the April issues, again, they dug a big hole in part because of that and other issues sort of snowballing each other in April. But they hit well. They also, and now I'm like disappointed that James isn't here for this year, they seem to do a really good job of driving in the runner from third with less than 2 outs. We talked about Yiner. He had 2 sacrifice flies yesterday, and Yiner's actually a good guy to have up in that situation because while he will chase a pitch, he can actually make contact with it. So they were actually both good at the big things of getting lots of hits, but also at some of the small ball stuff that makes purists happy. They should have home run instead, but my choices are strikeout. My choices are strikeout or sacrifice fly. I'll definitely take the sacrifice fly.
Yeah, I think a couple things happened over the weekend. Altuve came to play, and that's important. I think he's a tone setter. Everybody, and I'm not saying anything that Astros fans don't know. It is interesting watching some of the Orioles fans freak out because Jose Altuve is still playing baseball because most of their frame of reference has been the last 24 months as far as having a baseball franchise.
Look, we if any fan base understands why you may have taken 3 years off from watching baseball because you don't want your team lose 100 games, we offer our complete and total sympathy to Oriole fans who made that decision. But Jose Altuve was good before that, during that, and now after that.
But him getting on base, him actually making contact, I know he goes through, and people get concerned, I guess, but he goes through, these fits and spurts, and he has his entire career where he can't hit the ball at all. But then they're relatively small in the small time frames in the course of the season, and then you get into these periods where he just hits everything. He makes contact with everything, and I'm hoping that we are seeing the beginning of one of those stretches, maybe through the All-Star break at this point. That'd be really helpful.
Yeah.
Another guy. Go ahead. Sorry.
I say this is something true about Altuve and Yiner Diaz because they both are very sort of aggressive swingers. Is they will get into slumps because they're just being a little too aggressive. That's sort of the nature of, swinging at the first pitch as often as Altuve does. But they make really good contact on average. It's just sometimes the on average part is not working for you. But, we saw that. I mean, nothing better than a first pitch home run like we saw yesterday. And he crushed that ball.
Another guy who had a big series, Alex Bregman, who capped it off for the 4-for-4 day yesterday against the Orioles. Bregman has been, I would say, much and probably fairly maligned this year. He came into a free agent year, spent the offseason completely redoing his swing. The initial results were not great. I can't tell from watching if he's reverted back to the things that have worked for him in the past or the new swing has finally taken a hold. But whatever it is, over the last 30 days, like I've mentioned, he's batting well over 300 with a 996 OPS. He's hitting the ball well. He's hitting the ball in important spots, which is something he wasn't doing. And the pop-ups on the infield have virtually dropped to nothing.
Yeah, and Bregman always has a slow April, and I assume the greatest baseball minds in the Astros front office and in Alex Bregman's world are trying to figure that out, and they still yet to do that. It was a worse April this year than in other years, so there was, particularly notable, but he is always a slow starter, and he always heats up in May into June, and none of us know why, but we do know that it happens, and it's happened again this year.
I mean, I want to turn to pitching for a little bit because the Astros got, outside of that one inning, got 3 very good pitching performances over the weekend against the Orioles. Fromber was good. Fromber on Sunday. to the point that you didn't even worry about, what was going to happen. I think one of the interesting things this game, and I'm probably giving Salazar more credit than he's due for it, there was a little bit of hiccup at some point during that start, and Fromber didn't melt down. He's had a propensity in his career, as Astros fans know, of the first thing that goes wrong, the first error, the first call he doesn't get from the home plate umpire, you can count on him walking or giving up a big hit to the next guy. And really, I think I was reading this morning, 6 of his last 7 starts have been pretty good. That one start was really bad. I think that's what sticks in our mind as human beings. We remember that bad thing. But what are you seeing from Fromber that might be different or might be hinting toward more consistency?
Yeah, I think it was in the 4th inning where they had the double play ball to Pena, and he threw it high to Altuve, and he had to double clutch on second base and wasn't able to complete the double play. And that's one of those plays which, I think that's probably what you're referring to, where, oh gosh, it's Fromber on the mound and he doesn't do that. And he gave up a single to the next hitter, got it first to third, and you were sort of worried. And then, it was 2 outs, retired the next guy on a grounder to shortstop, a soft grounder, and looked good, looked good. Frankly, I think the home run by Jordan Westberg was just better hitting by Jordan Westberg. That wasn't a bad pitch. He just really pulled his hands in and got a pitch on the inside corner that is more impressed by the hitting there than thinking it was a bad pitch. And so Fromber is, Fromber had pretty good control yesterday, and that's always a big key to Fromber because people don't square him up. He gets lots of ground balls. The big issue for Fromber is if he lets too many base runners on, and then he can let things sort of snowball when sort of bad things happen. And so we got none of that, in part because he was pretty good about keeping guys off of first base, getting guys to hit the ball. His strikeout rate is down this season, but his movement on his pitches continued to be sort of outstanding. I would hate to play catch with Fromber because I assume he cannot throw the ball straight, and I would never actually get a glove on it. But fortunately, major league catchers are much better than me at this. And so, it's been, it was a frustrating bad start, the start in San Francisco, but everything else by Fromber recently has been, what we need.
He feels like the kind of guy that would yell at you for not being able to play catch with him, or at least show visible disappointment.
Yeah.
You would know how he felt. I think we all know how Fromber feels most of the time on the mound.
Yes.
Ronel Blanco on Saturday was equally impressive, if not more so. He's a guy that literally has come out of nowhere in the Astros organization. Dana Brown gets a lot of grief, I think, unnecessarily, because I think a lot of people don't necessarily understand what the general manager's job encompasses, because it's not just making the major league roster. That's the end product. But 2 years ago, he came into the organization and saw Ronel pitch and fought to keep him not only on the 40-man roster, but in the organization, because the Astros were ready to cut ties with Ronel Blanco after spring training last year. And all he's done this year is be potentially an all-star pitcher. He should be one of our all-star representatives. Had a very impressive start on Saturday. Has had a series of impressive starts. I don't remember the last time he had a bad start. And the only time he hasn't gone at least 5 innings was when he was sweating so much that he called the rosin issue on his wrist, which is only a problem if you don't play in Yankee Stadium or Dodger Stadium.
Mm-hmm. So Edwin Diaz got popped for that last night, except there were close-ups of his hand, and he either had way too much sticky stuff on there, or he needs a better manicurist. Someone should recommend that to him. But anyway, Ronel Blanco doesn't have that issue. He seems to, he sweats a lot, but he seems to get a lot of moisture on his hand. As a result, there keeps it nice and smooth. The other person I think who gets a lot of credit for Ronel Blanco is Josh Miller, the pitching coach, because he goes down to the Dominican Republic every winter to meet with his players, which I assume is standard procedure for lots of teams, but sure seems like a good idea. And part of in that trip to the Dominican Republic, he worked on a different changeup grip with Ronel Blanco, and that changeup has been such a difference maker for him because it's a strikeout pitch for him. He's able to work on a different. He can get a ball going, away, ball going glove side with his slider, and then a ball going essentially stays straighter, comes a little arm side with the changeup, and it's really sort of elevated him not only to to being a starter. You didn't have three pitches for the most part to be a starter, but also he's been able to really master that into an excellent pitch. So lots of credit to Dana Brown, you're absolutely right. Lots of credit to Josh Miller. Most of the credit goes to Ronald Blanco because he's the one actually doing it.
Yeah, I mean, you're exactly right from a tunneling perspective. A lot of guys throw a changeup. A lot of guys throw a fastball. He has gotten to the point where when you're facing him, you can't tell what's coming because it's all coming from the same position, from the same spot, same release point.
The pitch mix is pretty even between all three of them. So it's not like in particular counts, you're going to get the fastball. In particular counts, you're going to get the slider or the changeup. It's a mix, because he can throw all three effectively. If you have three effective pitches, you see what the results are. Yeah,
and the fact that he's not struggling with left-handers or not struggling with right-handers, because sometimes those fastball changeup guys, one or the other, tend to get away from him a little bit more. Rennell and Fromber have to kind of carry this rotation for a while until the Astros figure out what they're going to do. Another guy, Hunter Brown. Before I get to Hunter, I'd be remiss if we didn't mention Jake Bloss, who got his major league debut on Saturday, and as happens in the 2024 Astros world, proceeded to go on the IL immediately after that start.
There is no vaccine for Astros pitching industry injuries. And that even applies to guys from Corpus, apparently.
I assumed, as it would be our luck that we'd be hearing about a Tommy John surgery. Evidently, nobody's very concerned with a tweak in the shoulder. Of course, this is the same team that thought J.P. France had a tweak in the shoulder earlier this year, and he's out for the foreseeable future. So it'll be interesting to see. Bloss doesn't seem concerned about it. Don't know him well enough to know if he, what he says is real. Dana Brown doesn't seem concerned about it, but he doesn't seem concerned about a lot because this team's going to win. And gosh darn, maybe he's right.
He is an optimist. Calibrate what Dana Brown says to the fact that he's always taking the glass is always half full in his world.
But realistically, until Verlander comes back, when Verlander comes back, we've got Ronel Blanco, Framber Valdez, and Hunter Brown, who we can count on. And then it's what do you get from Arrighetti? It's kind of different every time, and that's what you would expect of a rookie pitcher. And then we still have to have a fourth pitcher or a fifth pitcher, and that's going to be interesting to see how they piece that together over the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, we got to come up with a rhyme like Spawn and Sane and Pray for Rain. Yeah, so
the schedulers helped us out this week because evidently we could only play the Rockies 2 games in a row ever. That seems to be, I don't know if they got their contract when they were an expansion team or how that works, but we couldn't play them a full 3-game series. It's just 2 games here, 2 games there, 2 games in Mexico, whatever.
Yeah. Which means they won't need the 5th starter until Sunday at Citi Field. So they'll actually have an extra guy in the bullpen for the next few days, including a Brian King who pitched like a king yesterday, 3 outs and 7 pitches, including a strikeout of Gunnar Henderson. So maybe he should retire. I'm not sure it'll get better than this.
Yeah, and Brian King is the 990th Astro ever. So congratulations to him. I don't know, it's a round number, so we celebrate it. I hope we don't find 10 more roster players this year, but
the way it's going, we will.
Yeah, if you're into rate stats, it's going to happen this year, probably around August. So what do we look forward to in the next couple of days? We have an off day today. We play the Rockies. Hunter Brown gets the start against Austin Gomber on Tuesday, and then Spencer Arrighetti takes the mound for a business person special on Wednesday. My hope is that we're 500 by the time that game ends on Wednesday. Where are you at? What do we need to see for the next couple games?
Yeah, the Rockies are not a good team. And so you hope that, that the momentum sort of continues, and you hope that, again, you continue to get good starting pitching. Again, Hunter Brown has been excellent recently. So again, the you don't have enough starters, but the ones you do have are actually pitching really well for you. Arrighetti is more sort of hit and miss. And again, I think Arrighetti's ideal role on this team is as a long reliever, but we're a long way off from getting him into the bullpen because we've still got, we have more starters on the injured list than we do on the active roster, which is, it's a dubious feat. So we'll see, again, so we get, but again, hey, they hit really well against the Orioles, and the Rockies don't have as good a pitching as the Orioles do, so it's another opportunity there. The Mets are having a frustrating season, except of course the Mets have been on a big winning streak ever since Grimace threw out the first pitch. So large guys in purple, I'm always in favor of. Hopefully we can break. Hopefully the power of Grimace doesn't go against the Astros. Maybe they should bring the Hamburglar with them up to Queens.
I learned something over the weekend that I did not know. Evidently, Grimace is a taste bud. That's what he is. He's physically a taste bud.
You learn
why
something.
He's purple, I have no idea.
Okay.
He didn't give me nightmares like the Fry guys did, though. So that's something. All right. Well, I guess other than me praying for the Aggies to actually do something they haven't done since 1939, I'm done for the day. There's also a Game 7 in the NHL tonight if you're into the ice and the sticks. Other than that, good health to the Astros. Hopefully we find another starting pitcher somewhere in the next 7 days. And go Stros.
Look, tonight's a night for two things that we thought might be impossible. One, the Aggies winning a national championship in anything. And two, the Oilers winning a championship, which seems impossible. Go Stros.